Viewpoint, the program of personalities, politicians, and perspective. Once again, it's Wednesday morning high on the road at 2250 here, County Road. Good morning, Mrs. Busby.
Good morning, Mr. Gossett.
How are you this morning, my dear?
Swell, thank you. Now that I've got my salon paws on my
Yes, well, as a matter of fact, that segs right into the kudo for this morning. You know, we always try to come up with a kudo each Wednesday morning of some organization or some individual who's done something especially nice for the community. Somebody kind of goes a step beyond. And Judith and I were laughing this morning on the car coming up that both of us had made a liberal application of salon paws due to some muscular problems. So this morning, Jim, the kudo will be the salon paws.
Really, it's a lifesaver, Jim. You mustn't laugh. Well, it comes in a tube, or you can get a little patch. And if you've got Arthur biting you really bad in a specific area, like my foot, okay, you rub this stinky stuff on you, and it's just menthol and aspirin, but I'm not kidding you. So maybe it's a placebo. Maybe I just feel like it doesn't hurt so bad.
So there goes the depth of this morning's program.
And it's Bill got in the car. He said, I hope my smell of salon pus doesn't offend you in the car. And I said, well, listen, I've got it on my foot. So we're kudoing it. Now, these young people sitting across from me have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about.
I have no idea what salon pus is.
Well, your day will come. Trust me.
Hopefully.
Trust me. Just hang in there. You live long enough, you get everything. At least that's what Ed Ulrich always said.
Oh, God, he had so many good things to say.
He did.
Oh, yes, exactly. Well, we'll get into the meat of the program right away, but I just kind of feel a little bit politically minded this morning. By your leave this morning, Mrs. Busby. The season's beginning to heat up a little bit now, and so it's kind of time to maybe put a little tinder on the fire. And Jay Leno said, if God wanted us to vote, He'd given us candidates. Well, that cuts both sides of the aisle. You know, we're fair and unbalanced here.
You betcha.
And the Aesop said,
any candidate who wears a white hat is exempt from the former statement there.
No white hats. There's no white hats. Nobody can wear a white hat. Mr. Aesop said, you remember old Aesop?
He lived right across the alley from my friend Roz.
Yes, that's correct, exactly. We hang the petty thieves and appoint the great ones to public office. Something to be said for that.
There you go.
All right, well, enough of that now this morning. Why don't you introduce our guest? Let's get right. This is going to be a trip down, let's see. We're going to have some sort of a trip into the art world this morning.
Yes, we are.
Why don't we just introduce our guest?
Yes, we are. And we're going to talk about the Lincoln Art Institute. Now, I'm sure you've passed
as opposed to the Metropolitan.
Well, it's almost the same.
Okay.
It's close. The Lincoln Art Institute is right next to the post office facing the courthourse in beautiful downtown Lincoln, America. Right,
Lincoln
fellas?
Courier
Correct.
building.
Yeah, you got
yes.
the location.
That's known as the Oddfellows building.
This is true.
Have you stopped in to look at any art there?
Not yet.
Okay, well,
I hate to tell you that, but see, I wanted to hear all about it before I make my maiden voyage. Okay, Moses Pinkerton is the artist in residence, nom de plume, and Jason Hoffman. Now, we're going to talk about how you fit in to the Art Institute. I'm sure people have seen the sculptures in what is to be known as the Busby Turner Parkway.
Which
there.
Is very nice.
Yes.
That gentleman was named for a young councilman named Nathan Turner and an older councilman who is Mrs. Busby's husband.
I have been informed of that, and unfortunately, I didn't know the guy. I just got into town 4 years ago.
Oh, well, welcome to town.
Thanks.
Take you about that long. Get a
At
plane
any
around the
rate,
square.
the first sculptor has been there for a little bit, but the new one, the cow and the corn, is obviously the new one, and I'm sure people have seen it and maybe thought, oh, how neat! I wonder how that came to pass. So that's what we're going to talk about, is how that came to pass, as well, of course, as the Art Institute, which is uptown on McLean Street. So, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And let's just start talking about the cow and the corn.
Okay. Came about after we put up Jason's piece, Constellation, last year. And I helped him with that, and he brought up the idea, you come up with an idea, and I'll give you a hand, and we'll put that one up. So I came up with an idea. We worked together to build it, and it went up. The city has been very receptive to public art in town, and Jason and I both kind of have somewhat of the same attitude of everybody can do art, and you hang it in the Art Institute or rooms or anything, hardly anybody sees it. Public art, you said you drive by it almost every morning. It's one of those things that something to put out there to have the public appreciate some art.
There you go.
They may not like it, but it's there, and sorry, but it's bringing
it
awareness.
At least makes us aware of art appreciation, and some are woefully unaware of that. One of you must be a whale of a welder. Jason, you're the welding type guy, is that it?
Yeah, a little. Yeah, it's a trade that I've been involved with ever since I was a little kid, and I went to school.
Well, it's a very saleable skill, and you're affiliated with the high school in Lincoln, is that right?
Yeah, I'm the woodshop teacher.
Good. Well, that's just right.
Say that again, please, sir.
I'm the woodshop techer out at the high school as well.
Okay. We probably ought to identify exactly where these two pieces of artwork are, Judith K. Some of the folks be surprised. Maybe it might not even come down that often. But it is on Sangamon Street, right across from the Blue Dog, a block down from the old depot. And if you drive down Broadway, you're going to see one. If you come down Pulaski Street, you pick up the other. So you've got your coming and going there.
Hopefully, yeah.
Now, in the interest of how long did it take you to create, number one, the first piece of art? Jason, how long did it take you to put that together?
It started in March and went through June.
Yeah, had it finished for the...
That fabrication-wise, maybe 3-4 months. And design-wise,
that's amazing.
Because it just happens over time through
they're
sketches,
huge.
drawings.
How you could put that all together in 3 months is amazing to me.
Now, tell me about your background, sir. How did you get an interest and get started in that part of the art world?
I grew up in a tradition of traditional woodworkers, farming on both sides of the family, and ever since I was in school, everything had to be functional. I had some art courses and had one professor at Eastern Illinois that really kind of changed my life. It introduced me to a sculptor by the name of David Smith, and I can remember it was late one night. I watched this video on this artist, and since that day I've kind of sweared on art, and this is what I want to do with my life, and it's a passion of mine. I grew up in a small farm community, and I didn't know much about art. I could draw ever since I was a little kid. I could draw photoreal people. It's one of my, I think that's one of my biggest assets as an artist, is the drawing, and that's where everything begins. So it's just evolved, I guess, over time.
Some people just
tools and welding and traditional woodworking has been a part of my life ever since I could remember. So
kid was born in the genes. Some people just have an innate ability to put something from the brain into a different form, either on paper or physically, like you've done your sculptor work. So many of us can't comprehend how you can go about doing that. I think that it's interesting that you've been able to hone that. By the way, at Eastern, did you ever, in the fine arts department, the gentleman in was a pottery man, Professor Hayduke, did you have to run into him?
No, Dwayne Nargon was my professor ceramics professor at Eastern Illinois. So he must have been retired at that point. Or?
And what do you want to do with your art professions, young fella?
Just keep making work. Like I said, I've sworn to making art, and it's a passion of mine, and just continue to make work.
Were you an art major, Jason?
Yes, I got a BFA from Illinois State University.
Wonderful.
In sculpture, emphasis in sculpture.
Bachelor of Fine Arts.
Yeah. And I didn't go on after school to get my master's. I kind of fell into a teaching job, coaching job at Lincoln College, and kind of the rest is. Didn't really feel a need to go back and get my master's. It's something I'm still debating at this time. Going back and pursuing a master's of fine arts degree, but it's still something I'm debating.
Right.
Skeptical on.
He still coaches wrestling at Lincoln College.
Thank you for that. As you know, we've got some pretty good, down through the years, we've had some pretty good wrestlers in that college department.
Oh, yeah.
Some
Top-notch program, junior college.
National championships and so forth. Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah.
Are you a member of the detective family?
No, not at all.
Well, now, Moses Pinkerton, that seems like that's
I've worked for him, though.
That's a Peter Sellers thing.
You did, really?
Yeah.
Oh, was that a fact?
Yes, when I was in college for a job, I was a nighttime security at a big warehouse where I'd have to go around and
Check the
do
clocks.
the time clock, and it was from, 10 o'clock at night to 6 in the morning.
And where did you go to college, sir?
I went to North Central College.
That's up there in Naperville.
You got it.
And were you an art major as well?
No, my degree is in philosophy.
Is that right?
There you go. Yep.
And how did you
Go figure.
matriculate into the art world then?
The art developed as a form of therapy for me, and was fortunate enough to meet Jason, and we have some of the same attitudes and ideas about art, even though our styles are somewhat totally different. I couldn't draw anything to resemble what you wanted to, but I can make a bunch of squiggly lines look like something that you think you might see.
I see. Maybe.
It's like the cow in the corn and his constellation. His is angular, straight, everything's measured, and mine is a little more loose and flowing.
Free.
Free, there you go.
Let it be free.
Let it be.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the Institute itself. Do you have memberships? Do you solicit artwork from local people who are into the art world and display their works for sale? Let's just talk about how it came about and what you do up there.
The Art Institute is basically the building where the art is displayed. We have a group, the Logan County Arts Association. As a matter of fact, anybody interested, we're having a meeting tonight at 7 p.m. at the Art Institute, so feel free to stop by. But it's a group of us have gotten together, and like-minded artists, what's the reason we make something? To show it off. So the Institute is a place to just show it off, and then we try to have some openings and garner some traffic from the locals into town, because art seems to be a hard sell in this town.
Go figure.
Go figure what?
Well, do you have any theory on why that might be the case? Other than that we're not truly metropolitan.
Yeah, well, it might have a lot to do with it, not something.
Lee Dowling, when I first came to town, I had met her. She told me art will never work in this town because this town is named after a man. Now,
Well, that's a different theory.
yeah, well, I didn't quite understand it either, and but that
Philosophy, it'd take a
was the-
philosophy major to figure that one out.
it's also the think tank, so I spend a bunch of time sitting around thinking these things.
Your objects, of course, certainly one of the goals is that they are for sale.
Yeah, yes.
And
You can buy the cow and the corn for $25,000.
I don't think
Okay.
we can't put that in my front yard.
There you go.
Maybe Jim will give us a raise. We could buy it and put it between the house and the lot line there.
You have to give us a studio, and we still couldn't do it. Excuse me, please. The hours, the public hours. It's important for us to know that, because somebody might be looking for a little piece of art to hang on a wall or something, and they measure from what size to what size, from small,
medium to large, just like McDonald's. We even can supersize it for you if you want.
Well, you did that on the campus there.
And you get change like at McDonald's too?
Sure.
2 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
I forgot what the question was before we got off on the size-wise of it. Yes, everything is for sale. There's about 10, 12 of us.
Most everything.
Well, yeah, right, most everything.
Virtually.
Some of us create stuff and don't want to let it go, but
Right.
like all artists, we want to make stuff, we want to display it, we want people to see it, let them make their comments of, hi, I like it, I don't like it. So
A minute ago you said some things are just for display. I can understand that. I should think you'd get emotionally involved with your work because you pour your heart in it. You know, to show us is one thing, but to let it go to us would be quite another.
well,
Be like selling one of your kids or
if it
something.
comes from yeah, that has been brought up, but you know what, if it comes from the heart, don't you want to give it and share it?
Well, there's a famous artist in the Southwest. I was just talking about this fellow named DeGrazia down in Tucson. Very, very famous artist. He's long gone now. He got a remarkable form that he had, and a lot of people up around here have DeGrazias on their walls and so forth. Anyway, he got miffed at something down there, and he just burned a bunch of his paintings. Real masterpieces in that genre, and he got all torqued out about something and put the torch to some of his pieces that he labored so hard on.
Yeah, it's what can I say?
Did you ever get mad enough you want to take a hammer to some of your stuff?
Oh, yeah, I have. I usually do it in the early stages. It's like once you've getting past that halfway point, it's like, well, let me just keep working on it.
Brush this out.
When it doesn't look like what you had in mind, that would be what would happen to my art.
I don't know. You have things in mind? How often does something actually come out exactly the way you envisioned it in your mind? Pretty much most of the time? Okay.
I think that's a virtue as an artist. You just have to be patient. You have to work through. It just takes time, a lot of time and effort and work. I think a lot of people miss opportunities as an artist because it looks like something dressed in overalls and work. I think opportunity is missed by a lot of artists just because
Now
the work that's involved.
You said, Jason, that you've liked to draw since you were just a little boy. What other mediums do you work in? Now that we've seen the sculptures, of course, do you do drawing and painting?
I don't like to restrict myself to one specific medium. I think as an artist, you need to work with what's around you. Use whatever materials that you can find to represent your idea. I don't think you should ever restrict yourself on I just make paintings or I just make sculpture out of steel. I think you just need to work with whatever material you can find to represent your idea. And then in the end, that's the art, is the idea, not the material.
Uh-huh. So you use several different mediums then? Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. And you too, Moses?
Like recently, I just built a giant-sized, 9-foot tall bottle of whiteout out of fiberglass and used urethane-based paint. So I use a lot of different materials. I don't restrict myself. I'm just not a metal artist or a painter or a drawer. I think drawing is just a means to the end. It's just it's the beginning. It's kind of like a draftsman with an architect. You've got to start. Architect starts with drawings, and the engineer uses
The blueprints, so to speak.
So I just use it as a basis, a foundation for my work.
How does the idea evolve? Where did you ever come up with the idea to make a sculpture of a whiteout, Bob?
Being a teacher, a woodshop teacher, I feel like I fix mistakes. That's my job, and I needed a big bottle, not just a.
Not the dime store size.
I think as a woodworker, especially a woodworker, everybody makes mistakes. It's the ones that know how to fix the mistakes. That's the real art in woodworking. Everyone's going to make a mistake. It's the ones that push through the mistakes to fix them, know how to fix their mistakes. I think that's the real art in woodworking. Everybody's going to make, and as being a teacher at the high school, it's really perfected my mistake fixing skills.
Correct.
I should suspect. But I've seen some things that high school kids have made, and it's amazing. You wouldn't believe that a high school kid could do this. Are you oftentimes awful proud of your kids?
Oh, yeah, and this is the first time we're going to have a booth at the art fair this year.
The high school classes?
Yeah.
Oh, how smart of you.
Well, I think the objective is not so much to sell work. It's more a showcase. I think there's a lot of talent that goes through that high school that, especially on our end, that kind of goes unnoticed in the school. So I think this is just a perfect way to display the work that these kids put out. And some of it, and you'll see next weekend. It's some of the work these kids do is just tremendous.
And there's no way to letter
motivating.
in that, is there?
Yeah, well, the kids. Like I tell them, you're only going to get out of this class what you put into it. So and they're going to have stuff. They leave with objects, functional pieces that they're going to have for the rest of their life, and at least they have something to show for the efforts they put into, their calendar year in my class. And it's completely different in a math and an English course.
There are very, very varied art forms, Judith K., and one which I am not proficient yet, but it's striving to achieve, get better, is segging into commercials.
Oh.
And what are we selling today?
And at this point in time, we'll take a few minutes' time and seg into a commercial, and then we'll come right back and visit with these gentlemen. Interesting thing we have right here next to the post office, in the old Oddfellows building. Go ahead, James. Right back live in the studio this morning here at Viewpoint. I have a couple of very, very interesting young men this morning, I guess. This is the old saying, art for art's sake. And all of us, various forms of art. Some we appreciate, some we do not appreciate. The lucky people are those who could appreciate art for what it is in its various forms. There's an interesting art form, and that is a blowing of glass, and you're certainly familiar with that. What's it found? Chihuly or whatever?
Dale Chihuly?
Yeah. I've seen some of that stuff in person. Remarkable. How in the world they can do that with glass, I don't know, but it's another world.
A lot of assistants.
Go ahead, sir.
He's got a whole factory of artists that work. It's not just him that makes the work. He's got 15 assistants that work. It's more or less an art factory, not an individual making the work. So
you stand there and look at some of that stuff, and you just
man-hours.
Yeah, something was uncovered while we were on break. Is that, and this is entirely unrelated. Well, I guess it's art in a different form. By your association with your wrestlers and so forth at Lincoln College, you are a good friend of the young man who just won a national championship, former Lincoln College student here, in the mixed martial arts, as they call it. I call it a brutal sport, but it kind of reminds me of the thumbs up or thumbs down in the old Roman amphitheaters. Corey Anderson, and you, as I just heard a few minutes ago, went out there and were present at when young Corey won that championship.
Yeah, he got his front row seats at Mandalay Bay where the fight took place. So interesting weekend in Vegas, that's for sure.
Memorable for you, wasn't it?
Oh, it was exciting.
648-5510. Somebody might have a question for these two gentlemen.
This Corey, now he works with you at the college, is that not true?
Yeah, well, he wrestled for us. He graduated in 2010. He was a heavyweight for us. He was an All-American, placed 6th place at the national tournament, junior college national tournament. And then he transferred to Wisconsin Whitewater, where he was a national runner-up for Division III school. And then after graduating from Whitewater, he came back and has been coaching with us the last 2 years. And now, winning the Ultimate Fighter 19, he's going to focus. And that's basically his full-time job now at this point. So he's not going to be with us next year. So we're looking for another assistant coach at this time to help take his place. So
is there some pretty good money in that mixed martial arts business?
It is now for him. He just winning that fight. He just received a 6-figure contract with the UFC. Guaranteed 6 more fights within the system. So at this point, it's
and before him, of course, we had Matt Hughes. And some of his trophies are on display there at our nice new building at the Lincoln Center. Mr. Pinkerton, Moses Pinkerton. Now that has to be a nom de plume.
Okay.
Your name is Tony Prang.
All righty.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of an interesting little sidelight for. Let's see. I'm going to have an extra name. I'm going to have an alter ego. I'm going to be Joe Bilsk. And how did you come up with?
How you doing, Joe? Nice to meet you.
How did you come up with Moses Pinkerton? I think that's kind of an interesting little sidebar.
Used to be in the meat business. I used to make deliveries. I used to make it to quite a few Jewish things. I had a big beard. As I told you, I had worked for Pinkerton, so I had the shirts and the badge and blah, blah, blah.
Voila.
The Jewish guy that was a good friend of the family says I look like Moses, and when I'd come and make deliveries, he'd call me Moses Pinkerton, and that's where Moses
it stuck.
Pinkerton
And it stuck.
Well, it's something I've used throughout my life to just be somebody else. When
I've never been able to accomplish that.
You've never been anybody else? Okay, well, I guess I'm suffering from some disease, and I guess I should check myself in.
Maybe not. Well, tell us what mediums particularly interest you.
By getting older, I've enjoyed painting, because you can't hurt yourself when you're painting.
Not so bad.
You're doing some welding, you can get some burn marks on your legs, steel, knuckles, but in woodworking, there's a lot of sanding, and my arthritis, I guess I should check into that somehow. Possibly.
Yeah, we'll write it on a paper for
all
you.
the sanding that is involved with wood tends to crimp up the hand a little. So I kind of almost want to try anything, and anything new is always in a little adventure, and I enjoy adventures.
An interesting sidebar on that. My mother, God bless her, she was living at that time, shortly after my father's death, in the Kirpin building. That's 3 stories up. That's Clyde Reynolds' property there on Latham
down on Latham Park.
And so she called me up one day. She had boogered up her leg and couldn't maneuver up and down the stairways. She said, "Get me some of those numbers paintings." Well, I did. I didn't know what that was all about. I took her some of these numbers paintings, and the first thing you know, when she moved to Florida, she started taking lessons from a known artist down there. And by God, before it was all said and done, we had a Grandma Moses in our family. She put out some pretty doggone decent stuff, just starting with numbers painting. Oh, we have a telephone call, sir. You guys will share a headset. There's 2 of them. And then we will take this caller.
Here you go.
I think we're ready now. Go right ahead, caller, please.
Yes, question. Why did you decide to paint the cow in the corn instead of leaving it just the natural metal?
Okay, you get that question, sir?
Well, one, it was not. It was made out of mild steel, so without the protective of the enamel paint, it would have suffered from the elements, and it would have shortened its. It's just a protective finish, more or less.
Also,
Again,
to add some color to the area.
So practically, it was a practical reason that you did that then.
All right.
I think both practical and aesthetic reasons.
I would agree with that, both reasons.
And I wanted to compliment Jason on his teaching wood class. Two of my grandsons have benefited from him, one being Kyle Young and one being Edward Bowlby.
Oh, man, those were probably two of the best kids I've ever had through my program. I love those
you had
kids.
two
They're
good
kind of
kids,
like
too.
a family to me.
I'm fortunate to have two works of their talent in my home, and it inspired the young Edward to transform my husband's garage workshop into a new workshop for Edward.
Actually, I was just over there last night helping Ed set some joiner blades in his in the joiner.
Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Hey,
Yeah,
Ben, thank you very much.
I appreciate
that.
Thanks for the call.
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
yeah, that was a nice compliment to you, sir.
Yeah.
And,
You know, Buzz was quite, my husband was quite a woodworker, really.
yes, he was.
Isn't that
Yes,
true?
that's a fact.
And it gives you such a personal sense of accomplishment to turn something into something so serviceable and so beautiful. And my dad was in the lumber business. Buzz was a woodworker. I guess I've been around it my whole life. And I think that to be able to appreciate fine wood and to care for fine wood and to do something with fine wood is admirable. And I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know what? It's always nice to see the results of your labor, and when you build something, you can actually see it. You guys are going to
Amen.
put on a good show. However, what do you have to show anybody else at the end of the day? Well, through modern taping and whatnot, you can have the show, but there's nothing physical you can put up and go, hi, this is my day's labor, so to speak.
I done good, you can't say.
Your grammarian was a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. It was in the olden days. But
Betcha.
I know one of those lads that you're talking about, and I can see why you're so
Well,
fond of
gentlemen, we
him.
have another caller. If you'll get the headsets out, please. And at this point in time, as soon as we get a headset adjusted further with our guest, go right ahead, caller, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I've been, I have to get away from the radio because I keep hearing this echo. I've been listening with interest to the talk that's been going on about art from Moses and Jason and you. And I'm hearing a theme or a pair of kind of contradictory themes that come up when people start talking about what art is. Is art for art's sake?
Mm-hmm.
Jason is talking about the importance of functionality, of function in things we make. And I think people sometimes struggle with that pair of ideas. Is if it's just art for art's sake, if it's not functional, is that art? Does that make it art? If it has a function, is it craft rather than art? When budgets get tight, high school courses about art get cut.
Oh, yeah.
So I would like to hear their ideas about how art and function fit or together, or how we can convince people that there is a functionality in things that are artistic.
Oh, there you go,
Thank
gentlemen.
you very
Thank you. That's
much.
very
Good
nice call.
question.
Appreciate that.
Go ahead, fellas.
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, art for art's sake was a term. Clement Greenberg, he was an art critic back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and it was more of a modernist term. I think art has more of a social, should have, especially in this postmodern era where art should have more than just be for art's sake. It should have somewhat of a social, cultural role. I feel like art's got a bigger purpose, should have a bigger purpose than art for art's sake. But it's subjective, and it's always been subjective. So,
A lot of things are art. Music is art. And it's amazing how a song, a melody, can transform you and take you away to somewhere that is nowhere around you.
That's beautiful.
And art, hopefully, when you look at it, it I like to go, well, you know what, I'd like to make people smile. So hopefully you look at it and you smile a little, whether or not your smile is a sly smile or whether or not it's a devilish smile or a contemptuous smile, it's still a smile.
Yeah, I've been the recipient of some of them in my time.
All three, yeah. I'm sure you've given a few, too.
You know, there's an old saying, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. We've all seen people stand in galleries and art institutes looking at a bunch of squiggly lines like a baboon had a paintbrush in his hand, and to them, that's art. Some of the rest of us was, good God, and pass it by, you know. So it is in the eyes of the beholder. Then, of course, I presume, and correct me on this, please, Jason, if I'm out on a limb here. Media, do they have an influence in acceptance of certain art forms? I just wonder about that.
I'd say the media pretty much can almost develop the whole nation's brain, whatever they tell you.
Well, unfortunately, they do that in many ways.
So, yes, if they wanted to promote art, they could make art. Back in the 1700s, artists were the rock stars of the day because we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have pictures, newspapers, and people passed paintings around to show where they came from or maybe where they want to go to or whatever, or who someone looks like.
You talked about people looking at art and smiling, and maybe they aren't smiling because they're appreciating it. Maybe they're smiling because they're thinking, what were you thinking?
Crap. Yeah,
you know. But now my friend has dabbled in art for eons, and she was introduced by an art teacher to a more modernistic form of art, and she was just a little apprehensive going into it. But as she began to understand the personal expression involved in it, she just really became a devotee, I dare say.
all right.
And do you find that in lots of people? That if you just try to understand it and appreciate it for its sake.
I think a lot of people get discouraged when they're painting and whatnot because they want something to look lifelike just like they see it. And part of the feeling nowadays is if you want to see what it looks like, take the picture. You know, if you're painting the same picture, I appreciate the craftsmanship and the steady hand that goes into making the fine lines and whatever they're drawing. But I'm more of an abstract type person, so I guess I would agree to disagree.
Okay, now you disagree with me on,
I don't know what I'm
on what
disagreeing.
level?
I'm just creating controversy.
Oh, all right.
And that's not a bad thing, by the by.
I can live with that.
It just gets people talking. Sometimes, like in my painting, I lose my train of thought halfway through. I go, where was this line going?
So, in that event, that kind of thing happens to me right along, losing my train of thought. There I am, hanging out there.
Yeah.
Tell me what you do if you're in the middle of this line and lose your train of thought. What does one do?
What we all do. You just
Start and
take a
regroup.
deep breath, stand back, walk around in a circle once, and
Hit it.
yeah, you know.
You know, Judith, you're going to find this shocking. But as a young man in the Air Corps, I was in training in Chicago. And one day I decided they had I guess it was a Sunday, must have been. And I went to the Chicago Art Institute. And there I'm standing, don't know what I'm doing, running around looking and from one thing to another. And up comes a fellow named Reverend Dan Kerr, who was Presbyterian minister when I was a high school kid. And he was in the Navy then, the chaplain. He was shocked to find that one of his former Presbyterian boys was in the Art Institute, as opposed to some bar somewhere. And I've always remembered that. Dan was really surprised to find me there wandering around looking, not knowing what I was doing, but I was kind of having a look anyway. At an early age, Jason, what would be your earliest age that you were aware of that you showed an interest in art in its various forms, many forms?
Once I figured out I could pick up a pencil and draw, I could draw what was in front of me, and I think there was a self-identity through it, maybe, in a way.
Kind of goes back to your first box of crayons, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in its
That's
own,
great. And you do see little tiny people, excuse me, who are going to draw something, and by golly, you can tell what they've done. It's amazing, and it should always be encouraged. Did your folks encourage you when they saw how interested you were in this?
My mother, not so much my father. My father and I've had issues with the art. Again, he's a small town farmer, apostolic Christian family heritage, and just doesn't really get the art.
He didn't see it as being the contribution that baling the hay is.
When I was in high school, our art teacher was a basketball coach, so it was more or less, here's a stapler, draw it. And I didn't know anything about sculpture, or I didn't know anything about Damien Hirst. I didn't know anything, and I feel like I felt, I don't know, I could draw a stapler when I was in kindergarten. Perfect. Like, what are we doing?
so big,
Why can't everybody?
It was kind
So
of
big deal,
discouraging,
yeah.
especially once I saw that video of David Smith. I felt I was angry. I was like, why didn't I know about? Why wasn't I informed about this a long time ago?
It's interesting.
So
At least you finally met
it found me,
heroes,
and-
didn't you?
yeah.
Even if they were videotaped.
Gentlemen, we
That's
appreciate your time giving us this morning here. It's an interesting thing to know a little bit more about the Lincoln Art Institute. Now, that's right next to the post office building on McLean Street. People can wander in and take a look at what you have in the way of the various art forms.
I live in the back half, so if the door is ever locked or something, there's a doorbell underneath the mail slot. You can ring that. Give me a minute or two to come forward, and I'll open up and show anybody through. Otherwise, I try to hang out in front of the building
And your meeting this evening is at 7.
at 7.
Okay, and people are invited to come.
Yes.
Okay, be there.
Our guests this morning have been Mr. Jason Hoffman, teacher at Lincoln Community High School, and also affiliated with Lincoln College. We appreciate that, Jason, very much. As
Thanks
you know,
for having us. Appreciate it.
I have a very, very strong affinity for what we do up there on the hill at Lincoln College. And Moses Pinkerton, who is not associated with the Pinkerton Detective Agency. He doesn't ride the rails or anything like that. We appreciate your business here this morning with us. We always try to close with a quote that's somewhat apropos of what we do and each program. And I found one that says, an artist sometimes get paid per hour, sometimes per picture, but most often, perhaps.
I like that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Here, just
We got
a-
Jason wants to, yes, go right ahead, please, sir.
Art should be a way to learn and to teach and how to push people to listen, to think, and to exist.
Thank you very much, Jason
All right,
Hoffman.
thank you.
Appreciate that.